What if I told you that the richest country in the whole world fell apart in just a few days? That the country that showed everyone else how to be successful ended up asking strangers for food, and that it didn't start because of a war. It started because of a lie, the idea that money would just keep growing forever. This is the story of the Great Depression of 1929, the day the American dream turned into a really bad nightmare. But before we go on this journey through greed, mess, and the fall of a money empire, make sure you subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling us which other dark moment in history you want us to talk about next. December 1918. Bells are ringing all across Europe, but not because people are happy. They're ringing because everyone is tired. The big war is finally over, and what's left behind is broken buildings, lots of debt, and hungry people. France and Germany are badly hurt. The Ottoman Empire and the old Austro-Hungarian Empire are completely gone from the map. The whole continent is crushed under everything that happened, but on the other side of the ocean, America's story is totally different. While Europe is trying to get back on its feet, the United States is doing better than ever. Factories that used to make weapons are now making things people dream about. Cars, refrigerators, radios, and stuff for the home. This is the beginning of the American way of life, a lifestyle that promises that everyone can have plenty, live modern, and be successful. On the streets of Detroit, Ford cars fill the roads, and the sound of engines has replaced the sounds of war. Inside homes, families sit together around an amazing new thing called the radio. From it, they hear music, news, and funny shows. And in the movie theaters, a man with a little mustache and a funny hat is making the whole world laugh. That man is Charlie Chaplin. America in the 1920s feels like nothing can stop it. Being rich feels like it will last forever, but that feeling comes with a price. During the war, the US government had started a big campaign to get people involved. If you can't join the army, invest. Buy a Liberty Bond. Millions of people did exactly that. More than 66 million Americans bought those bonds. That's more than half the whole country. By doing that, the US didn't just pay for the war. It also taught millions of regular people what it felt like to invest money. And that's when everything started to change. A country that used to save its money started spending it instead. Credit showed up as a new kind of promise. Buy now, pay later. Stores were selling furniture, radios, and cars where you only had to pay a little bit at a time. Money felt easy to get, and the future felt safe. Shopping and spending became part of who Americans were. Cities got bigger, tall buildings went up, and bankers in New York looked down from their fancy offices with big smiles. Everything looked great until greed started sneaking in everywhere. People started gambling with money, and what had been a strong economy started to puff up like a soap bubble. The American dream was shining bright, but nobody wanted to look too closely, because if they did, they could already see tiny cracks forming underneath. Right in the middle of New York City, surrounded by shiny skyscrapers and the noise of streetcars and cars, there's a short, skinny street called Wall Street. Its name comes from an old wall that Dutch settlers built way back in the 1600s to protect themselves from Native Americans and the English. That wall came down a long time ago, but in the 1920s, a new kind of wall went up in its place, an invisible one made of money, power, and greed. Wall Street looked like it was the temple of all good things, but the people who ran it didn't wear robes like priests. They wore nice suits and expensive hats. Out of all of them, one name stood out the most: Charles Mitchell. He was a smooth-talking banker who changed the way Americans thought about investing. Mitchell figured out something nobody else had fully understood yet. Regular people who were already used to buying war bonds actually trusted investing. So he took that idea and turned it into one giant business. If people had bought Liberty bonds during the war, now they could buy stocks, little pieces of real companies that promised to make money fast and safely. And honestly, who wouldn't want to get rich? Pretty quickly, he opened up offices all over the country where regular people could get into the stock market. Farmers, secretaries, workers, everyone wanted their share of that dream. The stock market became like a big show that the whole nation was watching. Newspapers printed stories about people who got rich overnight. Movie movie stars started investing, and everyone wanted to know what they were doing. Charlie Chaplin, the guy known for making people laugh, also became known for making smart money moves. But here's the thing. Mitchell and the big bankers weren't really investing. They were gambling. They bought stocks that cost way more than they were really worth, sold them for even more, and kept the fake bubble growing. The market wasn't going up because things were actually getting better. It was going up because everyone believed it would, and that kind of belief never lasts forever. Meanwhile, banks were giving out loans like candy. People were borrowing money just to buy stocks, betting everything on the idea that prices would keep going up. 9 out of 10 stock market deals were done with borrowed money. It was completely crazy, but it was dressed up to look like success. And behind all of it were the real kings of money, the ones people called Wall Street royalty. Names you might still hear today. J.P. Morgan, Thomas Lamont, Albert Wiggin. These were the big guys pulling strings from behind the curtain. They kept saying the market could take care of itself and didn't need the government watching over it. And Washington, too happy about all the good times, believed them. 3 Republican presidents, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, all looked the other way. The first one enjoyed the good times, the second one cheered for them, and the third one got stuck holding a bomb that was about to blow up. Only one man, Paul Warburg, spoke up and warned everyone about what was coming. He said if the market keeps going like this, a huge depression will hit the whole country. People just laughed at him. Nobody wanted to hear bad news. Money was moving, businesses were booming, and bankers were popping champagne bottles. And in September 1929, the excitement hit its highest point ever. The numbers were breaking records. The president got a letter from his advisors that said the market will fix itself. The future looks bright. 5 days later, the future fell apart. October 24th, 1929. The sun comes up over New York, but this Thursday doesn't feel golden at all. The air feels heavy and full of whispers and rumors. At 9 in the morning, stockbrokers look at each other with nervous eyes. The opening bell rings, and within seconds, everything falls to pieces. The whole index drops 11% in a single day. Screens fill up with red numbers. People don't really understand what's happening, but they can feel the fear deep in their stomachs. Stocks that were worth huge amounts of money yesterday are worth almost nothing today. And the worst part is, nobody wants to buy anything. Outside the stock exchange on Wall Street, a big crowd gathers trying to find answers. Men in fancy suits are screaming into telephones. Women are crying. Newspapers are shouting. The market is crashing. Within just a few hours, the financial mess turns into a national emergency. One person who was there described it like this. It looked like an outdoor madhouse. Bankers try to stay cool. Inside the building, workers act like nothing is wrong. Not because they aren't scared, but because the market only keeps going if people believe it can. If panic takes over, the whole thing collapses. In the middle of all this, a familiar face shows up. Charles Mitchell. He pushes through the crowd and walks toward the big J.P. Morgan building right across from the exchange. Inside, the most powerful men in the country are already waiting. Thomas Lamont, Albert Wiggin, William Potter, and Seward Prosser. Behind closed doors, they make a decision to try something almost impossible: save the market. They put in more than $100 million buying up shares of big companies. Their plan is to stop the slide and make people feel okay again. For a few hours, it actually seems to work. By the end of the day, the numbers stop falling quite as fast. The newspapers say the great men saved Wall Street, but it was just pretend, like putting a tiny bandage on a really deep cut. The weekend comes, and things feel fake calm. Then Monday, October 28th arrives, and the market opens again, and it all goes bad once more. The index drops 38 points in one day, one of the worst drops ever seen. And then Tuesday, October 29th hits, and that's when the real disaster happens. Banks, investors, regular people, everyone loses. It's estimated that in just 5 days, $25 billion just disappeared. Some people lost everything they had. Others lost their lives. Newspapers talked about people jumping from tall buildings, and while a lot of those stories were blown up to be more dramatic than they really were, the feeling behind them was real. A whole generation watched their future just vanish into thin air. The crisis didn't stay stuck on the trading floors. It spread to factories, to stores, to people's homes. People couldn't pay back what they owed. Banks ran out of money, and the government did nothing. The United States, the richest country on earth, had just broken. The Wall Street crash was just the first shake. What came after was like a full earthquake that hit every single part of the country. As banks started shutting down, money disappeared from the whole system like the ground had swallowed it. People panicked and ran to get their savings back, but the people working at the bank counters had no cash to give, only fear in their eyes. Within weeks, thousands of banks totally failed, and entire families lost absolutely everything. Houses were taken away, businesses locked up, and factories went quiet one by one. The country that had once shown the world what abundance looked like was now a nation full of people without jobs. Newspapers kept calling it a temporary problem, but the truth was something else. The American dream had smashed into 1,000 tiny pieces. In New York, Central Park turned into a camp for people with nowhere to go. Tiny shacks made from cardboard, old rusted cans, and little fires spread all through a place where rich kids used to play. People started calling these camps Hoovervilles, making fun of President Herbert Hoover, who everyone blamed for not doing anything to stop what happened. Men looked for work absolutely anywhere they could find it. Women stood in lines that never seemed to end just to get a piece of bread, and kids learned way too early what it felt like to be hungry. The mood in the whole country got unbearable. Rich people lost their big houses, poor people lost their sense of self-worth, and the government just kept saying the market would fix itself on its own, but it didn't. For the first time, Americans felt like the system that had promised them everything had just walked away and left them behind. The desperation brought a huge wave of people not trusting anything anymore. Churches filled up with people looking for hope. Political meetings filled up with people full of anger. Some were demanding fairness. Others wanted payback. The press from other countries showed pictures of long lines outside places, giving out free soup, and printed headlines that read, "The giant has fallen." Out in the countryside, things were just as bad. Dry weather and giant dust storms wiped out crops in a part of the country that people started calling the Dust Bowl, and thousands of families packed up and left their land, moving west, hoping to find some kind of opportunity that simply wasn't there anymore. The Great Depression wasn't just a money problem. It was like a deep cut in the country's heart. But even with all that sadness, a small flame of hope started to grow. In 1932, the American people decided enough was enough. A new name showed up, coming with a promise that things could be different: Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The country was ready to start over, but earning back people's trust was going to be a massive job. The most powerful country in the world was on its knees. Unemployment had reached levels nobody thought were even possible. 1 out of every 4 Americans had no job at all. Banks were closing their doors. Factories were sitting there rusting, and hopelessness was filling up every corner of the country. It was in the middle of all this that a new leader stood in front of the cameras with a quiet but strong voice: Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He promised a new deal, a big plan that would bring hope back to the American people. His first goal was to make people trust things again. He ordered all the banks to close for a little while. It was a big, bold move to stop the panic. When the banks opened back up, the government promised that people's savings would be protected by a brand new organization called the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the FDIC. For the first time in a long time, regular people felt like their money was actually safe. But Roosevelt knew that protecting people wasn't enough. He had to rebuild everything. He launched a whole bunch of huge programs to create jobs and get the economy moving again. Almost overnight, thousands of men started building roads, dams, schools, and national parks. The letters WPA and CCC became symbols of a new time. Work in exchange for your dignity back. Americans finally had something to lose again and something worth working hard for. Meanwhile, in Congress, a special committee was created to dig into what had really caused the 1929 crash. What they found was more shocking than anyone had expected. After 3 years of hearings and thousands of pages of testimony, an uncomfortable truth came out. The men who had been running Wall Street were, in many cases, just corrupt and had no conscience. Charles Mitchell, the very banker who had gotten everyone excited about investing, was caught not paying his taxes by moving stocks over to his wife's name. The president of the stock exchange, Richard Whitney, was caught stealing money from his own customers, and the famous J.P. Morgan Bank was caught keeping secret lists of special friends, politicians, judges, and businessmen who were given sweet deals that regular people never got. On those lists was none other than Calvin Coolidge, the former president who had always said banks didn't need any rules. The hearings became a huge national show. For the first time, regular people got to watch the untouchable, powerful men being put on the spot and questioned. Public anger mixed with a little bit of relief. Finally, it felt like justice. Even so, Roosevelt knew the road ahead was still going to be really long. The economy wouldn't fully get better until another terrible global event arrived, World War II. But the New Deal had changed something that went deeper than just numbers. It changed the relationship between regular people and their government. The United States was starting to figure out that a system with no rules and no one watching over it wasn't really freedom. It was just a disaster waiting to happen. The Great Depression wasn't only an economic disaster. It cracked the whole world open. The center of it all was Wall Street, but the shockwaves went everywhere on the planet. The collapse of the American giant dragged Europe down with it. Europe was still trying to heal from World War I. What had seemed like a chance to rebuild turned into a landscape of unemployment, poverty, and hopelessness. In England, factories made almost half as much as before. Plants shut down, and millions of workers found themselves without a way to make money. In France, small businesses collapsed, and in Germany, the hit was absolutely crushing. A country already barely breathing under war debts and relying on American loans suddenly lost its main lifeline overnight. The effects weren't just about money, they were about politics, ideas, and real people's lives. The German people, who were already poor and humiliated, started looking for someone to save them. And in all that desperation, Adolf Hitler found his chance. He promised jobs, stability, and pride for the nation, and millions of people followed him. So, a crisis that started on Wall Street ended up opening the door to the rise of Nazism. In Italy, Benito Mussolini's fascism got stronger with its message that the government should control everything. And in the Soviet Union, Stalin tightened his grip on power, holding up communism as the only real answer to the total mess that capitalism had made. The Great Depression, without meaning to, had lit the match that would start the next World War. Back in the United States, even though the New Deal gave people some relief, the wound never completely healed. For almost 10 years, millions of people kept on living in fear, never forgetting the day their money and their faith just disappeared. The country was changed forever. The blind trust people had in the market gave way to rules, oversight, and the government stepping in. The myth that things would just keep getting better forever had died. And yet, from all that darkness, one lesson came out that people still talk about today. That power without limits corrupts people, that greed dressed up as hope and positivity can destroy empires, and that the worst crises aren't measured just in how many dollars were lost, but in the lives of people who were never the same again. The story of the Great Depression is really the story of how a country found out just how far its own ambition could go, and how the entire world ended up paying the price for believing that good times could last forever.